No, it's all good. Yeah, over here. So right now it's 10:38 a.m. That was very precise on a
Mhm.
Sunday.
Very good.
So yeah. So what I started doing, Sasha, and I'm trying to is there are a few things.
Hmm.
As I'm getting comfortable doing this podcast weekly, I want to have repeat guests as well. As you know, they
Hmm.
have more. I don't think so. One podcast does it for everyone.
Hmm.
I had two people who told me that like an hour is okay, but there are some, podcasts which is 7 hours, and I'm like, I don't know what you could possibly talk for 7 hours.
A long time.
Yeah, it's a lot. I know like Joe Rogan has 3 hours, and I'm like, I literally skip parts. So it's always good to have you. And so those who don't know, I will pass it to you to introduce yourself. But you and let us know where you're joining from as well. That'd
Yeah,
be also
sure.
great.
So my name is Sasha. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast for the second time, and it's a big honor to me. I'm a digital marketer working in IT industry. Originally, I am from Russia. I'm based in Serbia now, Belgrade, amazing city, I love it. And I actually even moved here because I like the city, not because I didn't have any other options. And I do a lot of diversity initiatives besides my regular job, and I also do some social media and involved in certain projects connected with diversity and inclusion. And I also run the workshops called I'm Remarkable, which help women boost their potential and speak up about their accomplishments and help them to avoid any unconscious bias regarding self-promotion. So that's pretty much it.
This is actually great. And so I think one part I want to have is I want to understand.
Mhm.
Um, so there's actually, when you mentioned something, I realized I should include that, and we can see if we want to. But the current state of DEI, many companies are
Mhm.
scrapping it. I have some
Yeah.
strong groups. I have some opinions about it. I'll try not to cancel myself.
Sure.
So that's one. But I definitely want to understand is women in tech. Um, Mostly because I'll give you my context, and then someone like yourself who is part of it, who talks more about it, deals with it, can help people like myself and others that why is it so important? So in my org, I I I've been like most of I only have two men or two, different genders. Most of them are women. And that's fantastic. And I feel very happy about that. Um, I guess my question is, and I'm stating this with a question.
Mhm.
What is the right way to support women in tech? Because I've had two people, or when I say two people, there's
Mhm.
conversations I'm just trying to extract. There are two kinds of people. They say if when you do it that way, you are being biased.
Mhm.
And there was a huge pushback. And then I supported by saying, well, I don't look what they are, where they're from. I look at their work. And if their work is great, I don't give a shit. Let's just have them. Let's just do it. But then there are other people, they push back. They're like, no, you should make significant, not bias, but like effort to recruit more women. Uh, so that being a question, so I need if you can have something on that. And the second part is there are also some roles, and I think we spoke about that last time. When we look at
Mhm.
sales, marketing, it's mostly women in there. Also men, but like mostly women.
Mhm.
Customer support, customer service, and now I think also design is also mostly women, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. I love that because now it's getting to a technical skill, right?
Yeah.
Product is a mix, engineering heavily men. With that being an open statement, I pass the mic to you. Help me out here.
Yeah, exactly. When I was thinking about our topic for today, I, of course, refreshed my memory regarding recent news with D&I topic. And yes, I'm like, gosh, we're making this podcast right in the very right timing, right? To speak about that. And yes, it is at some point, unfortunately, that diversity programs are being shut down globally. And but it also can mean two things, right? I remember even from my previous job, we had one of the chapter leaders for DNI track, and she would usually say that our program's goal is that it shouldn't exist because when it exists, it means that there is an issue. If they work so well that the issue is gone, then nobody needs this program anymore. So, of course, I understand it's one point of looking at the issue, right? And of course, we're trying to keep positive mindset. And I don't really know for now how impactful that would be. Would this really make a change moving further, right? Regarding all of the globalization with DNI programs that they're not um, in the agenda that much anymore. And we just need to see within a year or two on how the business will change in regards to that. And of course, something that you mentioned, moving to your second point on how to support women in IT. I would say that the key goal here and the key goal of all diversity trainings, I would steal actually this idea from Reshma Sojani, who is the founder of Girls Who Code organization. And she said that the key goal here is to teach people to be brave on acknowledging their achievements, to teach them how they can acknowledge everything that they are doing, right? Because this is also something that you just mentioned that you would rather hire just the best people, right? That would be a proper fit for the role. But at some point, you will never know who is actually the best persona for the role. Because also there was a study by HP a few years ago. They learned that I think we discussed it somehow last time that men applicants they have a different perception to challenges than women, and women would usually apply for the job if they see 100% fit on their skills. And men would do the same with the 60% fit of their skills, right? So having this in mind that there might be a really 100% skilled woman for this particular job, but she will never apply only because she's raised to be humble, she's raised to be not too brave, because this is what Mark Zuckerberg says. We need to bring more masculinity. Maybe it's also about that, right? Maybe women need to be more brave. And yes, this is a big challenge, and still I see a big difference in between how women approach the jobs versus men, right? And we need to do something about that. Hence, I believe that diversity programs are still very important. What was done over the past 10 years, right? The awareness on diversity was raised globally, right? Now everyone knows that the issue persists. And speaking about the change, and you also asked this, I think it was the third part of your question, very multi-level question. What changed? Women started being more brave. I do not have representative selection of all women in the world, of course, but I see that they are there. And you can even look at the top management of every IT company. I mean, shutting down of diversity programs doesn't mean that all of the board of directors personas will be giving away their spots, right? I mean, they're there. There are certain women that got raised because they uh, learned how to be brave, right? And they learned maybe sometimes the hard way on how to grow yourself within a career, right? That you can also accept any challenge. And also like it's also like funny having in mind this Barbie movie. It is actually
Yeah.
really, yeah, it is a great metaphor on all of our lives nowadays, and it also speaks about the hard part of being a man, and also at the same time a hard part of being a woman, because the expectation of a woman is to always be perfect. And because of that, also remembering about this 100%, it's very hard for a woman to keep on proving that she is the best. She should be the best in career. She should be the best mother. She should
Yeah.
be the best taking care of home and everything. And that's why we consider the challenge as something super huge, right? Because you also have to be successful, not just in one field, but
Yeah.
in all of the playgrounds. Um, I can tell you one story about
Hmm.
a girl that I knew, and she was an engineer. Um, and many years ago, I think maybe it was 2016
Hmm.
or 15, something like that, maybe like 10 years ago. We went on a trade show in, I think it was in Barcelona or Berlin, some European show, where everyone would go to showcase and expo their products and
Yeah.
have a lot of speaking sessions and workshops. So there was a big room where our company that I was an employee of was presenting some product and some features, some speaking slot, and there were like about 200 people for this particular speaking slot. And of course, we had several speakers for the session,
Hmm.
like maybe three of them. And also, as people were approaching the venue, like 10 minutes before it all starts, there were two or three girls who were giving away merchandise,
Hmm.
like pins or something like
Yeah.
that. And one of the girls who, like, all of the girls who were like super beautiful, super smiley, because
Yeah.
they're like sales people, and this is how they are trained to greet
Yeah.
people, right? And they were actual employees of the company. And there were like, of course, male dominated audience, and the men were starting like making jokes or giving some compliments to this girl. And it like, remember, it was 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And sometimes the compliments may be perceived differently, right?
Yeah.
And so there were some sort of flirting with her, something like that.
Yeah.
And can you imagine that when the lights go off and when the actual speaking slot starts,
Yeah.
she gets on the stage because she was the one of the top engineers in the company by that time. And it was like 100% super technical speech about the product features, about how it
Yeah.
works, like all of this complicated mathematics stuff, right? And everyone was like really shocked. I mean, I wish I could have recorded their faces, seriously, because this is something that they did not expect. That this spot girl, probably hired as a promoter, right?
Yeah.
Would not speak technical, right?
Yeah. You know?
And of course, they started respecting her,
Yeah.
and she made a change. And I think that nowadays, stories like that do not happen anymore. I mean, they happen, but not that often, because I'm only giving you one example from my career,
Yeah.
right? And it was just very often.
I
And mhm.
sorry. Sorry. Go ahead. Complete your thought. Sorry.
I was just trying to conclude that nowadays I don't see such I don't like this loud words as like sexism and things like that because I still want to think that in the professional sphere we tend to respect each other, not minding the gender, the abilities, the background. And I really want to believe that this world should be a better place and we're moving towards it. But I clearly can tell you there is way more respect to women than it was like 10 years ago, even because I also changed my mindset. Because for some of the things that I would not even think of 10 years ago,
Yeah.
nowadays I would report to HR if that happens. Because 10 years ago it was sort of normal, right? You didn't
Yeah.
even pay your attention to it.
So, this is a very interesting topic, and I don't know
Mhm,
where will this, I guess I will come out of the zone of like being too protected. So I actually have
mhm,
in so I had this one engineer as well.
mhm,
She was great. Apparently she was a model before. And
mhm.
we were in some conference in Vegas. It was some cybersecurity one. This is way before.
Yeah,
Oh, was it? There was something I traveled somewhere. It was either San Diego
yeah,
or somewhere there. Okay. I'm
yeah.
messing up my
Okay.
history. And the interesting thing was I did see that it got to a point where it became very uncomfortable for her.
Mhm, mhm,
And as a someone who's a male coworker, I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Like, should I do something? Should I? And so I just, male is extinct. I asked her if you feel uncomfortable, I can switch the role with you and do that.
mhm,
And she was fine. She did it. But apparently, when the what happened after the conference was, uh, it was like we had this session. You know how they have not the speaking sessions, but like you have these workshops where you're
mhm.
like,
Yeah.
and most number of men were in that workshop, like. And I was like, oh wow, it's a full house. And then she later came to me. She like, these are kind of mostly all the men who were trying to come to our booth. And at the same time, I felt very like that's, messed up. At the
Mhm.
same time, I was like, we did get a message across. So it's weird position to be in.
Yeah.
I think here's my perspective. So that was 10 years ago, right? And now, how do you things are now? Because I've seen two sides of the coin. I have seen that there are folks who are really like I'm trying to come up with the right word, Sasha. So I'm trying to also be protective a little bit.
Mhm,
I don't know. Look, English is not my first language. I'll put that there as a disclaimer. Do you feel now like yes, it's really, really, really underlying important. You can be an alien. And I always say this in my personal work life. I said, you can be an alien. I don't care a rock. As long as you make stuff happen, we should never care. That should be
mhm,
like the underlying. And I do feel that in professional life, that should be it. And I think we've gotten there. But do you
mhm,
feel now, and you did mention like going to HR, do you feel now both sides or all genders or whatever exists, right? Have they gone too sensitive? There's this thing of hypochondriac, right? When I get a small cut, I'm like, shit, I'm gonna die. Probably this rust is getting into my bloodstream, and probably this is it. This is the end.
mhm,
Do you feel as a society when we look at this, and I'm asking with genuine
mhm,
curiosity, I feel that we are there, that we have become too oversensitive, which has made working environments instead of being more less hostile, less like careful, but be like we're in this together, let's win together versus like let's be very careful. And I think you should be careful either way.
mhm. Yeah.
Respect your regardless, whoever your professional coworker is. I guess that's my question. Do you think we have gotten into that state? Hence, I want to
Mhm.
lead to another question, and that'll be a separate question, but like, hence DEI being one of the things which is like getting chopped. Like, oh my God, it went to too extreme.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and vulnerability is also like one of the key topics for me as a person, right? And I also try to assess every time. So whenever I get into some conflict, or not even a conflict, but a situation where the message is not 100% clear to me,
Hmm.
if I cannot understand it myself, I would ask for an advice of my partner or my manager, right?
Yeah.
And I would do this sanity check, like, am
Yeah.
I out of my mind, or this is really a bit off, or this is not what the person was mentioning actually? Because, as you say, English is not your first language, neither mine.
Hmm.
And sometimes, and since we're all working in global environment, some
Yes.
people might put things the way that they just think differently, right? Because English is not their first language. They wanted to say it the other way, but they could not.
Yeah.
Because, historically, people from Eastern Europe, they're known as like super tough in their
Hmm.
communication because we're not trying to sugarcoat everything and we're too direct.
Yes.
In business wise, it might be considered as like rude.
Yeah.
And from what I see, people do really try to be softer in their communication, and they do try to learn English the hard way, of course, and trying to adopt to the environment that they're in, and they're trying to be more polite. And for example, even there's many companies, like global ones, not just technological ones, who started introducing digital etiquette trainings, which are
Hmm.
really important. And I can even give you an example from the company I worked for. We had some sort of a cultural etiquette training,
Yeah.
sort of things. And some people, they simply do not know that there's like different options. And for example, some men didn't know that it is eh, okay etiquette wise to shake a woman's hand. Because in Eastern
Hmm.
Europe, I think things like that, they did not exist. But I always shake hands with everyone
Yeah.
because it's equality.
Yeah.
And I saw a change when men started shaking hands with women. But women, they simply felt disrespected because men didn't do that, but men simply didn't know they can.
Yeah.
So diversity programs, they do make a change, and of course it depends on the persona who drives it,
Yeah.
and it depends on the company goals, on the budget sometimes. If we're speaking about my own experience, I see a big change for the trainings that I run, which are called I Am Remarkable. This is the program initially started by Google, and
Hmm.
this is 100% free training. It lasts up to 2 hours in person and online. And basically, the trainers, the facilitators of this workshop, they teach people over these 2 hours how to acknowledge accomplishments, how to do self-promotion the proper way, and how to think out of the box in regards all of this matters.
Hmm.
And I can tell you that I do build a connection over these 2 hours with the people, and I do organize some sort of a chat or an email thread where I would follow up and send like some materials after the workshop. And this is a pure reward for me when people would reach out to me, sometimes even a year after, and saying like, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, I actually used the device from the training, and I actually used this as a tool, and I
Hmm.
got a career progression, or I got a payment raise." Because sometimes people just also they just didn't know there was such an option to ask for a salary increase, right?
Yeah.
But going back to your question regarding people getting more vulnerable because we increased awareness on diversity, yes, for sure. Um, stupid example. Some people cannot accept their names, for example, right? So, for example, I am Alexandra,
Yeah,
but I have like 20 options of my name. I'm Sasha, Alexa, Alex, like
yeah,
hundreds of them. And there are certain people who would call me different ways, and I'm totally fine with that because this
yeah,
is the name that was given to me by my parents. But I know a few people who refuse like shorter versions of their full names. Like I'm
yeah,
Alexandra, but if someone, for example, you, right? I know you like for not for a long time, and you would call
yeah,
me Sasha, and I would think like, oh, what the
yeah,
familiarity. Not polite.
yeah,
I don't care, really. I don't care. But some people even make a comment like, don't call me this way, this is disrespectful, things like that. And I believe this is also regarding diversity because they now know that they can claim it differently. Of course, I don't mind. People can be called the way that they like. This is totally
yeah,
fine. But the way they perceive it, they just cannot hide their trauma. We're all traumatized, all of us. This is fine. This is life. We're
yeah,
gaining experience, but we're getting like way too psychological here, maybe.
mm,
But also, you should always do like your internal reality check, whether it is okay or whether it is not okay. But in most cases, when people don't like their names, it's
yeah,
do you think your mother called me my mother called me Alexandra when I was a baby? No,
yeah.
of course not. She would be calling me Sasha.
That's just so interesting. You know, I've actually so people call me different names. They always ask
Hmm.
me, did I pronounce your name right? And I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, if it's tough, you can call me Shake. I mean, if that's tough, you can call me Is. I don't
Hmm.
care. As long as you're calling upon me that you need something from me, I am fine. But then there are people I've come across who are very sensitive.
Hmm.
Probably will go to war, and more power to them. You have to pick your battles though. You cannot get mad on small things like that. But then again, who am I to say? But I do agree with your point, what you're saying. Like, there's a sense of like people need to check with themselves as well that you're talking about. Like, you did mention
Yeah.
is hitting up with a little bit psychology, and I think that's the part which is like, if let's say if a male coworker would say, "Oh, that's so sweet of you to pass me, this file. I don't know, the file, iPad, whatever."
Yeah.
The opposite gender could be anybody at this point. Could be like, "Oh, I didn't like the word sweet. It was harassment." Right? I
Mhm.
don't know if that's happening. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
it should be taken. There are plenty of male out there. Like there's a whole bro culture that was because of that. It messed things up. Uh, but I guess to my question, right? So, and that was the last part,
Yeah.
like the sensitivity and the DEI, right? So I want to go to there. Do you think, Sasha, like women in tech, we want to talk
Mhm.
about that, and I think women in tech is helping, right?
Yeah.
I, I I guess before I jump into the DEI part, my question for you, or you can just tell me, is like,
Yeah.
do you think we have gotten to the point that women in tech is now all what are some challenges, which I guess I'm trying to ask, what's left in terms of challenges? Because now we are seeing more and more women. I work for a woman CEO. I don't know if I ever mentioned to you. She's
Mhm.
great, and I think more power to her. If she watches this, great. If she doesn't, okay. Yeah. But
Shout out to her.
yeah, right. Why not? And so I think it's great. I've been fortunate enough to work for two women founders, and I will be candid. I think it was so amazing to work under them, not because of any biasness. I think they had a very different drive. They were
Yeah.
very like, let's get shit done, let's make it happen. And I'm like, well, let's do it. One of them was a ex Israeli, Air Force, not Air Force, like, you have to go through that training. And I was like, that's fantastic. Currently one, she's a doctor, amazing. But I don't know if she's a practicing doctor, but like she's doing, she's CEO of the company.
Right.
I My question is, we're seeing more and more. At least I'm seeing in my life. I could be one of few. I guess.
Hmm.
What are the remaining challenges and realities that are still being, you know, taken care of or
Hmm.
addressed by women in tech?
I can tell you. So first of all, the statistics says,
Mhm.
I think it's 2023, that there is 26% of women in tech industry.
Oh,
26%. So it's still
a lot,
it's there is still
a lot
some room
left.
for the growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So um regarding what's left, I think it's basically just a woman has a right to decide, right, whether she wants to build a career or be in a family or do both. And I believe you know hundreds of examples of women CIOs who
Hmm.
have amazing families, who have three kids. I don't know how they do it, by the way,
Yeah.
but I'm very impressed by that. And I mean, it's just from the top of my head on what's left. I wish that all women could be even braver to build their careers and not feeling guilty for not succeeding in something. Some field like families or some career goals, right? We should not be perfect. I mean, like we're humans. And this guiltiness, it only raises up anxiety and this impacts the qualities of our lives. And, we should always also, like the stupid example from psychology, we should always compare ourselves to our previous selves, right?
Yeah.
Um, like every time I look at sea-level women, the same age as I am, of course, there is like some imposter syndrome in my head talking to me like, hey, you are not even sea-level.
Mm.
What are we doing here? The life is almost
Yeah.
done. Yeah, but it's also connected to the sensitivity because there is different sensitivity levels to different people. Some people have very thick skin, some people don't. The same with career goals. For some people, running a marathon is an easy thing because they're built by nature, the way that they can be athletes, right? And the same with career goals. For some people, there is like certain level that they reach and they should be comfortable about that and not sacrifice and not think that, oh, I could have done so much better. We should always just enjoy ourselves and find peace in what we do. And I think this is also like some psychological chat versus
Yeah.
versus women in technology
Yeah.
serious talk. But at the end of the day, wellness is one of the topics. Like work-time balance. And also, the companies are still recovering from COVID, right? And people still don't know how to treat it, right?
Yeah.
And also, I can tell you one more example about men versus women split.
Hmm.
I study MBA, executive MBA at the University of York.
Hmm.
And in our group, in our particular group, there is 16 people. Four of those are women. And this is not just technology. These are all industry. These are
Hmm.
pharma, logistics, technology. But this is certain executive level. And also when we combine our groups with the whole course, where there's
Yeah.
like 200 people, there is pretty much the same situation. Like there would be less than 20% of women in a group. And um, I would just think that women can do more executive wise because like you have just said, like, oh, let's get there, let's just
Yeah.
do it, no time to explain, just
Yeah.
get in, we just need to get it done. And I think sometimes women still are, I mean, they're not afraid of going into working in technology, but they're
Hmm.
still afraid to claim that they can be an executive. And I'm also like one of such examples because my friend who is a CPO at one of the technology companies, he actually asked me yesterday, like, oh, so you finished your MBA. What's next? Are you doing that because you want to be CEO? And I'm like, actually, never
Mm,
thought of. But you know, for him, it's
yeah.
so easy. And for me, it's just, oh my gosh, I think I need to complete at least 5 MBAs to be an executive. And
Interesting. Do you think it's like that's a part of imposter syndrome, though? I'm just thinking.
maybe, no, maybe, of course, maybe. Because, you know, there's also a big thing like there's some adults out there and I'm still growing up. And
I know what you're talking about. I think, it's the factor that so for example, when you see, Vlad, the CEO of Robinhood, and I had a
Mhm,
conversation. I have to make sure I make this conversation very anonymous when I present it.
mhm, mhm,
So one time, okay, I'll put it this way. One time I had a conversation with an engineer, and I was like, "Hey, you should definitely be head of engineering."
mhm,
And he's great. I like him, and he was like, "No, I don't have that much experience." And then my answer to them is like, "There are people younger than you and me in this outside running a multi-billion-dollar company. Do you think they know any better?" They're just surrounding themselves with smart people who help them. And I think if we can invest, and I think that goes for like yourself and women in tech, I'm like, let's invest in you. And so let's put you to the next level because if we don't do that,
mhm.
and this is where I like Elon Musk. Sorry to bring him in.
Yeah, sure.
I think the only reason he had an interview with Trump recently happening, whatever, in the White House, and he mentioned something. That one particular line for me was very important. It's okay to make mistakes. And I think
Mhm,
it's okay for women who are in tech, you know, maybe they have experience, maybe they don't have it. Something happened, we give them, they should be not scrutinized too much overly. You make
mhm,
mistake, great. Now let's amend it and we'll fix it. That's the attitude I think would be great uh, for women in tech and the society to support that outside. Because I think like when a woman CEO makes a mistake, when a guy does it, I am guilty of that. It's different. When a woman does it, you overly scrutinize that. I'm like, okay, okay, now back off of here. She has every right to do the mistake, and I think
mhm.
that's missing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how will that change. Maybe we have to have the society move into that way, but I just wanted to share that basically.
Mhm. No,
So,
I
mm,
totally get what you're saying. Sure.
yeah, and to that point, my then question is, so the DEI part, right? So you mentioned psychologically there's imposter syndrome, could be. Uh, you feel like, hey, we have to get there too much to do it. And so there are people out there. But do you think the DEI part, Sasha, became too much over? So I come from Pakistan. In
Hmm.
Pakistan, we have called something as quota system. A
Hmm.
quota is like 10 people from this group, 10 people from this group, 10 people from this group. And Pakistan is not that big, but we have, I think, a population of, I think, close to 250 or 200 million. And there are different
Hmm.
sectors, different sects, the way you have in the US or maybe other countries, but we have different like language and dialects. And so depending on which government is in power, they have quota system that we will only have this people. What ended up happening is they ended up hiring people because of the quota, because you are representing a marginalized group or something, and that's it. Skill sets were thrown out the window. Do you feel that happened? Like, I think women in tech fixed it for women. They're really equipping women in many
Hmm.
ways. But do you think that DEI went a bit? It was meant to do something and something else happened. I don't know. It's a very open question. I don't want to get canceled on this shit.
Hmm.
But I just want to ask. I'm very curious.
No, I cannot speak for everybody, of course, and I don't
Yeah.
know how. every company, every government, every country treats it, right?
Yeah.
Every time it depends, whatever extreme it is, and it's not just regarding diversity, it's never for good, right? But if we have an example of two candidates, one
Hmm.
has Cambridge degree or Yale degree, right? And another one is also smart, but from a poor family.
Yeah.
And um, this family did not have enough money to cover this education. Um, and obviously, the person with a Cambridge degree, they have better knowledge, more likely, because
Hmm.
at the schools, I mean, you do not pay for nothing, right?
Yeah.
And technical, of course, the candidates with Cambridge degree would be like 100% fit versus the one without that will be like, let's say, 60% fit. But you know what? As a smart leader, you should always be thinking about diversity because a person with no Cambridge certificate has its own story and experience of advocating their knowledge, interest, and they might be thinking more strategically. They might have different skill set that might be more profitable for the role than for a person who got there. Of course, a very good candidate with good knowledge, but they might have gaps in like strategic thinking, or they might not never, but they might not ever made their mistakes
Hmm.
because they always had a backup, right? Because you know, this is also like a common saying that
Yeah.
if you haven't failed two of your startups, don't even start talking to investor in Silicon Valley because
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
No.
And people who always win, they don't actually. And it's also a matter of giving another persona a chance. And diversity helps with that. Diversity helps us to have a growth mindset
Hmm.
and looking at other people's abilities, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, this is how I would treat. Of course, for my own team, I want just the best people. This is one point. But also,
Yeah.
if you hire just the best people, more likely they would fail in the strategy because they would all have similar minds, because they would never see the whole picture. And the
Yeah.
person who has a totally different experience and totally different education and everything else, they would probably see a different goals, right? Um, and this would be more beneficial for the company's success.
I, what I like is what the way you're mentioning it. I'm all in for that. When I'm like hiring, I look at so when I when I'm hiring, I don't look at people's college degree. I have a hot take. I feel it's a scam. You can have the best. It's like a logo, right? Doesn't really
Yeah.
reflect on your. What it reflects is, okay, you were smart and you were able to use your brain and you got into a good university.
Mhm.
What at least in design, you can do is look at their work, portfolio, and everything. And if in the example that you gave me, I actually would rather go with the guy or the lady or the person who has come from struggling background. And my one
Mhm.
basic reason is if you have gotten in front of whatever, reviewing the stage of your resume, you're definitely hungry in life. And I think that's the big motivator versus like someone who is from a great university. Not that all are not hungry, but like, what it showed
They
me
don't
is
care.
like, yeah, they literally,
They
they
will
don't
find the
care.
job anyway.
Yes, yeah. So for me, it's like how to put it? Nothing in their life that went wrong. Number one. Number two, they don't know how to handle failure. And that's me overly assuming that maybe they failed in life. But the third thing is definitely calling out is that you're great in showing up every day for 4 years straight and get a
Mm.
degree. So I can trust you for doing something for me. But if I were to trust
Right.
you to build something new, I will go with the hungry person, which is, maybe from a poor background, maybe struggling, and I value that more. Um,
Mm.
but that's a part of diversity which is good. But then there's this different diversity where I was listening. Some companies were not looking at merits. They were just looking to fill in seats. That, oh, we need to have people of different skin color, gender, and I'm like, oh, okay. And there were some companies I can't name, they will actually make the questionnaires. And I know we're getting on time, so this is my last question or last discussion, but
Mm.
they will actually get into asking easier questions to candidate with different backgrounds. You can think of genders, you can think of skin color,
Yeah.
race, whatever. And I felt like, so you are accepting they're lesser than. Like,
Mhm.
I could be wrong. Uh,
So it's not equal, right? It's not
yeah,
equality.
it's not equality. Like, it's saying like, oh, I know you're not that good. So I'm gonna ask you, what's two plus two? For me, it's
Hmm.
like, why are you assuming I will not perform better?
Hmm.
So that's my question. Like, I don't know if you have any insights on that because you're involved in like Western diversity and everything, right? So
Hmm.
it's just me being very curious. So
Well, to me, diversity means treating everyone equally. And the example that you are giving is not treating everyone equally. I understand about I mean, obviously easier task. I mean, I can understand that because, again, to the example,
yep.
right? Person who learned something at Cambridge probably has more knowledge than the other person. And yes, of course, the questions can be different. But here is the tricky part when you actually have to unlock potential, right?
Hmm.
I might not be a good fit for this job because I have certain failures in here, right? And I cannot count two plus two, but I have something else. And that's why we have lots of assessment tests, and they're not just um, they are very good in assessing people abilities, not based on their knowledge. And I would rather accept this tests well, that you pass kind of mentally, right,
Yeah.
to see a good fit. I know that there are certain companies that would look at IQ, but it was proven as an experiment that IQ doesn't mean anything.
Huh.
Students with higher IQ are not progressing in their jobs better
Oh.
than the ones with lower IQ. Yeah, that there is an actual study. Um, I mean, I mean, I know it's very popular in America. Like people show off like what
Yeah,
level
yeah,
of IQ they have, but actually it doesn't mean anything about your abilities. It doesn't mean that you'll be more successful. So yes, I think the key goal here is in proper assessment and good sense of judgment. We
yeah.
cannot speak for everyone. We cannot think. I do agree that I see extreme things, and also I sometimes I could say this about myself. I'm like, oh, I didn't get this job because
Hmm.
you remember, like when I was 20 and I was looking for a job, it was normal to ask a woman on a job interview, like, oh, you're going to have a baby
Oh, I
like
remember
within
that.
the next 5 years. So yeah, we're not hiring you because of that. I'm still there, still no kids. I mean, like they lost a good candidate, but they're lost.
Yeah,
Also, it doesn't mean anything. I mean,
yeah.
like women even progress in their career after they having a baby, and this is how psychology and hormones work. But it's a different topic. But yeah, I would rely on like some common sense and good judgment and proper assessment.
Yeah.
when speaking about diversity. I mean, like, but the issue you're addressing, yes, it is extreme that we have to accept everything and everyone no matter what. I don't know where it's gonna lead us to, but I really want to hope that we have smart people in this industry who will lead it to something nice.
Yeah, no, like I know we're getting to a point. I guess my question to you last,
Hmm.
you hinted at something, so I'm wondering if I should ask. You
Hmm.
did say that, oh, the industry people, so we get to a better, good sense of judgment. So
Yeah.
do you think the answer is let's focus on merit, meaning we treat everyone equally, and
Hmm.
your good universities doesn't mean anything to us if you don't pass the interview backgrounds. Do you think that it's not merit precisely? It's basically seeing the overall person versus just seeing what school you went into. Do you think that's the answer? And what will be your parting thoughts for this?
You know, it always a mix of everything. I mean, I graduated from the best school in my hometown, and I got it for free.
Mhm.
And only the smartest students got it for free.
Oh, wow.
And this tells something about me, right?
Yes.
And I'm not from a wealthy family. This is the judgment that I'm speaking about, right? And of course, there's different conditions, there's different countries, um, and yeah, merit is a good way, but it's just a complex you cannot, and of course, you cannot see ahead of everything.
Yeah.
Some people would say that it's better to rely on your intuition because, for example, I think for the current team that I'm working with in now, we're just really we're aligning really well together. We're absolutely different. All of us have totally different background, different education, but we all align really well. And as a leader, as a manager, when building a team, you should always think of how these people will match together.
Mhm.
And of course, it's not just about the education. There is also like personalities, right? Our personal qualities, and this matters a lot too. I know some companies who hire toxic people because the company is toxic. And I know that these people work there for many years because they are a right culture fit and they feel comfortable there.
Actually, it's funny. You did mention like toxic people will hire toxic people. Because I
No.
think I think that's when it comes to intuition, I think that's what plays into. No, today I think today's conversation was I really enjoyed it because I think it was a very and also where I want to take the podcast into is in an open conversation.
Hmm.
You really what do you say? You really double clicked on many things that I wanted to share or talk about. And I think we talked about that. I think diversity of how you're thinking. But
Yeah.
then how these other companies were doing were very different, right? And you were like, no, it's not equality. This is like you're literally then singing something else. And so thank you, Sasha. I know it's very late where you are. Thank you for
No worries.
joining.
Thank you.
Hopefully to record a podcast with you in person. I think that'd be great. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of how to get there. So I'm still figuring that out. COVID is over. But no, thank you, Sasha, so much for joining, and hopefully have you again as well.
Thank you so much, Imran, and you have a splendid day.